There was once a phrase Roman mothers used to silence their children. Hannibal is at the gates. Not a monster, not a god, a man. A general from North Africa who crossed the Alps in winter with war elephants and brought the greatest military power of its age to the brink of collapse. He never captured Rome, but he forced Rome to become stronger simply because it could never ignore him. That is the kind of man Hannibal Barca was. Born in 247 BC in Carthage, modern-day Tunisia, Hannibal was the son of the Carthaginian commander Hannibal Barca. After Rome defeated Carthage in the First Punic War, Hannibal made his young son swear one oath: never be a friend of Rome. Hannibal kept that promise for the rest of his life. He spent decades mastering warfare under his father and later his brother-in-law, studying not only tactics but Roman habits, psychology, and decision-making. Lesson 1. Study your opponent more than yourself. Hannibal rarely had superior numbers, but he understood Rome so deeply that he could predict and manipulate its generals. In 218 BC, Hannibal made what many still consider either genius or madness. Instead of attacking by sea, where Rome dominated, he marched through Spain, hostile Gaul, and across the Alps with war elephants. He lost nearly half his army before reaching Italy. Then he won Trebia, Lake Trasimene, and finally, Battle of Cannae, one of history's greatest tactical victories. Facing roughly 70,000 Romans with only 45,000 men, Hannibal placed weaker troops in the center and stronger cavalry on the flanks. The Romans pushed into the apparent weakness, only to find themselves surrounded. Between 50,000 and 70,000 Roman soldiers died in a single day. Military academies still study this battle. Lesson 2. Never fight on your opponent's terms. Control the terrain, timing, and rules of the contest before it begins. Hannibal remained in Italy for 15 years without reliable reinforcements, leading soldiers from many nations, languages, and religions. They followed him because he shared every hardship. He slept where they slept, ate what they ate, and demanded no sacrifice he would not make himself. Lesson 3. Leadership is earned through shared cost. People willingly endure hardship only for leaders who endure it beside them. After Cannae, Rome stood vulnerable. So why didn't Hannibal march on the city? Historians still debate the answer. He lacked siege equipment, expected reinforcements that never came, and hoped Rome's allies would abandon it. Instead, Rome recovered. It rebuilt its armies, adapted to Hannibal's methods, and eventually defeated him at the Battle of Zama under Scipio Africanus. Lesson 4. Momentum is perishable. When opportunity opens, move before your opponent has time to recover. After the war, Hannibal transformed Carthage as a statesman, reforming its government and finances until it became prosperous again. Rome still feared him. Forced into exile, he spent his remaining years advising kingdoms that resisted Roman expansion. In 183 BC, surrounded by Roman agents, he chose death over capture. His reported final words: "Let us relieve the Romans of their prolonged anxiety." Defiant until the end. Lesson 5. A person who knows who they are does not wait for others to decide their fate. Hannibal never conquered Rome, but he crossed impossible mountains, won impossible battles, held together a multinational army for 15 years, rebuilt his nation after defeat, and remained Rome's greatest fear for 6 decades. That is not failure. That is a life so formidable that the most powerful empire on earth could never stop looking over its shoulder. Build something that undeniable. Become someone history cannot ignore. You become the one.